Hi everybody, this is Adam McCarthy, and today I'm going to give you some information about tort liability, and I'm also going to present to you 5 different cases that I found involving schools that had to deal with tort liability. Now with all of these slides, I'm not going to give you all of the information that I cover word for word from each slide. I'm just going to kind of summarize just the key points and maybe some of the things that I would have done if I was an administrator in that position, because some of these cases, I can't imagine being involved in the middle of these. So hopefully maybe educating my staff someday on some of these examples make us pretty alert and aware of everything we're doing on a daily basis within the school. But to get us started, there are 2 different types of tort liability. We have intentional, which is any student who has intent to harm another student, or maybe it's even a teacher who has like purposeful intent to defame or harm a student. And then we have unintentional, which, as the word says, is just an unintentional consequence, something that happens and a student ends up getting hurt because of that. Now our first case we have here is Leanne Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District. This was a case where there were 2 special education students. One was a female freshman and the other was a senior male. They both happened to be at school one day, and then they cut out from school at some point. So they were marked present in the morning, and then towards the afternoon they were marked as unexcused because they had just simply walked out from the school and they had left together. And what ended up happening is these 2 individuals went to a friend's house, and it was during that time that the female freshman student was sexually abused by the male senior student. In spite of this, the mother of the female freshman student was so enraged with what had happened that her daughter just left school, and apparently she was not notified of this, that she filed a lawsuit against the school district, and she ended up winning. So this was something that happened off school grounds. The teachers in that case did everything they were supposed to do. I mean, they marked the students unexcused right away at the beginning of class. But the mom was upset that she was not notified because she believed that she would have known right away that her daughter was not at school. She could have done something about it and avoided that abuse that her daughter had to go through. But like I said, she ended up winning that case, and as it says there, she won $500,000 in damages due to that. And so I think as principal, what would I would have done with my teachers in a situation like that? The big thing that I would do is not really on the teacher's end, but more on the attendance secretary's end. If we notice that we have some students there in the morning and then they are all of a sudden unexcused, especially if they're an education or special education student, something's probably happened to them or they've made an unwise decision. So I would hope that my attendance secretary would let me know, hey, Mr. McCarthy, we have this scenario going on. What should we do? I just think communication and being involved in all this, and again, making sure that teachers, which they did in this case, but still making sure that teachers are taking accurate and good attendance on a daily basis to avoid any kind of liability like that. The next case I found is called Myers versus Cincinnati Public Schools. This was a case that involved, I believe it was an 8-year-old boy, and he had been bullied at school, and then 2 days later he had ended up hanging himself at home. And so the mother of this boy holds the school responsible because there was this bullying that had taken place, and she believes that bullying is what led to her son committing suicide. Again, it's a very unfortunate situation, but it makes me wonder, where does the school stand on this? Come to find out at the end of this case is that the school was not held liable to my knowledge. According to the slide there, it says this case is currently ongoing, but after doing a little more digging, after finishing that up, do not believe the school district is held responsible. Again, the school is claiming that the student had some ongoing mental issues beyond what was provided in the initial case findings. And then the mother was also upset because she was not notified of any of this bullying that apparently had been going on at school involving her son until almost a whole month after her son had taken his life. So again, very unfortunate situation, but I really do think as principal, man, there's lots of things that I would have done to avoid a situation like that. The first thing being making active communication among my staff members that, hey guys, we need to be observant in the hallways. We need to be observant during after school hours, before school hours. We shouldn't be sitting in our classrooms, so that way when something like this does happen, we have visual confirmation from a teacher, not only a surveillance video like they did in this case. And if I did even see something like that as principal, man, I would let that parent know right away that, hey, your child was involved in this incident, just so we could kind of cover ourselves and hopefully have avoided that entire situation by making that mother aware of what was going on with her son, and hopefully have, obviously not a lawsuit from that, but also saving the child's life, which is the most important thing. For my third case, this is Donna Andarazzi versus the town of East Haven. As a coach, this one was really interesting to me because this was a lawsuit that was filed against a cross-country coach. What had happened was they were having practice out on the track and they were running laps on the track. Well, one of the athletes on the cross-country team was not paying attention, and he ran into a bench that was actually out on the track. And he tumbled over that bench, and then he ended up trying to brace himself and catch himself with both his arms, and he ended up breaking his left wrist. And so the parents filed a lawsuit against the coach and the school because he was not providing a safe practice environment for the athletes. So as a coach, man, this one kind of alarms me right away. And I'm already thinking, oh my gosh, like next year I'm really going to have to be making sure during track practice, during basketball practice, that everything is like creating a safe environment, making sure all the athletes are ready to go for practice. So already even just reading this is kind of getting me a little anxious. But come to find out, the coach was not held responsible for this. Yes, it is up to the coach to create a safe environment, but it's up to him as to what that safe environment is, not what the parent believes is a safe environment. So that was kind of an interesting resolution to this case. As principal, the only thing that I would really do, and this is something that my assistant principal does with us in our building for all us coaches, is we just do like a coaches meeting at the beginning of every single season, just kind of going over good habits that we can establish for making effective practices and being positive characters to all of our athletes that perform for us. And so that just kind of gets our minds trained on making good choices, basically, for all of our kids at practice. All right, our next case, number 4 that we have here is NM, which is a censored name, versus Anchorage School District. This one is kind of a crazy story, and you'll see as you read that there's some interesting things that happened. This was one of the first articles that popped up as soon as I just started researching tort liability cases, so I'm sure I'm probably not the only one who's going to do some research on this case. But what had happened was there was an elementary school-age student who was running outside of the school building at the end of the school day, and they had tripped on the sidewalk right outside the school, and there happened to be a pine bush. I got a picture right there if you don't know what a pine bush is. It was kind of like a trimmed down pine bush. The student actually propelled themselves into this pine bush. And as the article had stated, is for someone like that who's that young, those little pines acted like needles. And they had several that perforated one of the student's eyes, so he ended up losing some eyesight because of that. They also had multiple perforate different parts of his brain, and parents believe that brain damage was going to be permanent because of this. And this is an insane situation. It's just a freak accident. I mean, this is obviously unintentional tort liability because this bush obviously didn't have it out for this student. But because of this, this family actually won in court a lawsuit for $4.5 million in damages that was done to this child because they were claiming that he's going to have lifelong complications. He's going to need assistance his whole entire life. And the school was disagreeing based on medical results. But I guess the jury decided in favor of the parents and of the child. So, man, what a huge case. Out of everything I found, nothing was even close to $4.5 million in damages. So that's just a very unfortunate situation and something that I think is very hard to avoid, just freak accidents like that. But as principal, something that I would do is just talk to my grounds, my maintenance crew. Maybe just if a teacher notices something like that, hey, there's a pine bush right out here, it's right next to the sidewalk, maybe a kid might fall into it, something like this might happen. Again, I think it's just very hard to predict something like this occurring. This is a lot different than any other of these cases that that are presented. So as principal, it's kind of hard for me to think about what else I would do. But again, just being attentive to those things. If someone in grounds and maintenance knows it, that they see something kind of like this, just let me know. And again, we're making effective communication to hopefully avoid something like this in the future. And lastly, we have Rosen versus University of California. I kind of went off of the beaten path with this one. I wanted to analyze something that not necessarily took place in an elementary or secondary setting, which is the other four cases I share with you. This one actually took place on a college setting. And while this doesn't necessarily impact us at the elementary or secondary level, because what this family sued the university for is already covered at those grade levels, it was still really interesting to me and something that I had never really thought about before. And how would I handle that if I was not principal but maybe dean or something of this university? But what had happened is there was a chemistry class and there was a female and a male student, and in the middle of class, male student pulls out a knife from a bag, turns around and just stabs this girl. It says in her chest and in her neck. And again, something that, how are you going to predict something like that happening? A student, bringing a weapon to university and just assaulting another student. So the student who was assaulted ended up living from this, and almost 10 years later down the road, they decided to file a lawsuit against the university for this, that the university should be offering protection and security services and just being alert of students like this and, of aggressive behavior. So I kind of think to myself, well, in the secondary setting where I work, yes, it is our responsibility to provide that safe environment. So there could be a lawsuit. But what would I do to prevent something like that happening? The first thing is just, teachers, you got to be aware of behaviors that are going on in your classroom. And I know because I have 135 kids that I see every day in the classroom. It is hard to keep an eye on every single one, know what's going on in their life. But really, if a teacher just notices, hey, there's something kind of off with this student, as principal, I would like to know that information because then I can relay that to the counselors and we can possibly get this student some help that they really need. Especially in this day and age, mental illness is on the rise. And I really talked about it in my module 11, if you happen to take a look at that. But we really need to do a better job of identifying all these students who maybe have any kind of mental illness, because we can see, as example with this scenario, what happens when that goes unaddressed and that student's not getting the services and the help that they need. And so, in conclusion, my view of tort liability has opened up quite a bit. This is stuff that I had never really thought about before. And again, it's a lot of this information in this class is new to me, but still, it kind of makes me want to keep myself in my A game, like every day, really keeping an eye on my students in the classroom, seeing what's going on in the hallway, and just being attentive and being a good listener. And again, I think all of this could have been avoided in some of these situations, minus the freak pine bush incident, if you just communicate, whether it's communicating with students, if something is going on in their lives, if you're communicating with parents, if you're noticing things are going on with their students, if their children are bullied at school, just keeping them involved so that way they can address some of these issues at home too. But making effective communication strategies as principal is something that I am definitely going to do, because I think, it couldn't have avoided everything that happened, but maybe one or two of these liability cases could have been avoided just with some better communication. And that's it for my 12th module. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see y'all later.